Ambassador Jake Morrison sat at the curved table in the main conference room of Harmony Base. The space station hung in neutral territory between 3 star systems. For 3 months, he had watched the same arguments happen over and over again. The Galactic Peace Summit was supposed to end the wars in the Outer Rim. Instead, it had become a contest of who could shout the loudest. To his left sat the Zephyrian delegate, General Korth. The tall, blue-skinned warrior had spikes running down his arms and back. His people believed in taking what they wanted through strength. To Jake's right was the Corvin representative, Minister Vex. Her species looked like walking crystals, and they made every decision based on cold logic and math. Between them sat delegates from 10 other species, all arguing about the same borders and trade routes they had been fighting over for 2 years. Amy Collins, the human mediator, stood at the front of the room. She held a data pad with her latest proposal. Her brown hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her blue uniform looked wrinkled from too many long days. She had been working 18-hour shifts trying to find solutions that would work for everyone. If we divide the mining rights between 3 systems instead of 2, Amy said, the Tellians can have the rare metals they need for their medicine, while both the Zephyrians and Corvins get access to the fuel deposits. General Korth slammed his fist on the table. The sound echoed through the room. The humans speak of compromise like it is wisdom, but compromise is weakness. The strong take what they need. The weak accept what they are given. Minister Vex's crystal body glowed with a cold blue light. The human solution ignores basic economic principles. Their emotional thinking clouds their judgment. They propose sharing because it feels good, not because it makes logical sense. Jake watched Amy's shoulders drop slightly. This was the 15th. Different plan she had presented in 2 weeks. Each time, the major power shot it down without even considering it seriously. The smaller species, like the Tellians and Vortani, looked interested. But their votes meant little when the big powers disagreed. Ambassador Skell of the Tellian Republic raised his thin, green hand. His people looked like tall plants with arms and legs. The human proposal has merit. Our scientists have studied the mineral distribution. Sharing the resources would benefit all parties while reducing conflict. Nobody asked for your opinion, Plant, General Korth growled. Your people hide behind others instead of fighting for what you want. Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his face calm. This was how every session went. The humans would propose something fair and practical. The smaller species would support it. Then the Zephyrians and Corvins would reject it and insult everyone. Who disagreed with them? Amy tried again. What if we create a joint management system? Each species could send representatives to oversee the mining operations. That way, everyone has a voice in how the resources are used. Minister Vex's glow grew brighter. More emotional thinking. The humans want everyone to hold hands and sing songs. This is why young species should not be involved in serious decisions. Young species? Jake finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the room. Humans have been spacefaring for over 200 years. We've helped negotiate peace in 17 different conflicts. Our mediation programs have saved millions of lives. General Korth laughed. It sounded like rocks grinding together. 200 years? My people have traveled the stars for over 3,000 years. You are children playing at being adults. The ethereal chairman, Vilek, floated at the head of the table. His species looked like glowing energy beings inside transparent shells. They were the oldest known race in the galaxy, and they acted like everyone else should bow to their ancient wisdom. Perhaps it is time we addressed this issue directly, Chairman Vilek said. His voice sounded like whispers from far away. The human delegation has been enthusiastic in their participation. However, their lack of evolutionary development may be hindering our progress. Jake felt something cold in his stomach. What exactly are you suggesting, Chairman? I propose we vote on limiting human participation in future galactic decisions. A species must demonstrate sufficient wisdom before being granted full voice in matters of such importance. Amy dropped her datapad. It clattered on the floor. You're talking about taking away our voting rights? Not taking away, Minister Vex said. Her crystal body flickered, simply recognizing reality. Humans are not ready for the complex decisions required in galactic governance. The room fell silent, except for the hum of the station's air systems. Jake looked around the table. Some delegates avoided his eyes. Others nodded in agreement with the ethereal chairman. All in favor of restricting human voting rights in galactic affairs? Chairman Velek asked. 8 hands, claws, and tentacles rose into the air. The Zephyrians, Corvins, Ethereals, and 5 other major powers all voted yes. Only 4 species voted against the motion. All smaller powers who had supported human mediation efforts. Jake stood slowly. He was not a tall man, but something in his movement made the entire room watch him. He gathered his papers and datapads with careful, deliberate motions. Amy looked at him with wide eyes, but he gave her a small nod. Ambassador Morrison? Chairman. Velek's voice had a hint of uncertainty. Do you wish to speak before we continue? Jake picked up his briefcase and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he turned back to face the assembled delegates. The United Earth government came to these negotiations in good faith. We offered our knowledge, our resources, and our lives in service of galactic peace. We believe that wisdom came from working together, not from counting the years a species has existed. He paused and looked directly at Chairman Velek. You have made your position clear. You believe humans lack the wisdom to participate in galactic governance. Very well. We respect your decision. Jake activated his communication device. All human personnel are to depart Harmony Base immediately. We are withdrawing from all peace. Negotiations effective now? General Korth laughed again. Running away, like children who did not get their way. Jake's expression did not change. No, General. We are giving you exactly what you voted for, the chance to solve galactic problems, without human interference. We wish you success in your endeavors. With that, Ambassador Jake Morrison walked out of the conference room. Behind him, Amy Collins and the rest of the human delegation followed. Within 6 hours, every human ship had left Harmony Base. Galaxy was about to learn what peace looked like without human wisdom to guide it. Captain Lisa Park stood in the medical bay of Harmony Base, watching her team pack the last of their equipment. Around them, alien patients from 6 different species lay in recovery beds. Some had been injured in the ongoing border conflicts. Others suffered from diseases that only human medicine seemed able to treat effectively. A Vortani child, no bigger than a human toddler, but covered in soft purple fur, reached out to Dr. Kevin Hayes as he prepared to leave. A child had been in a coma for weeks until the human medical team found the right treatment. Now she was awake and scared. Where are the kind doctors going? The child asked in broken standard galactic. Dr. Hayes knelt down and gently patted the child's hand. We have to go home now. But you're getting better. The other doctors will take good care of you. Lisa knew that was not entirely true. The other species had good doctors, but none of them understood cross-species medicine like humans did. Humans seemed to have a gift for seeing patterns and connections that others missed. In the past year alone, her teams had developed treatments for diseases that had puzzled alien doctors for decades. Captain, her communication device buzzed. This is Admiral Kate Stevens. All human personnel are to return to Earth space immediately. No exceptions. Understood, Admiral. Lisa looked around the medical bay one more time. Medical Team 7 departing Harmony Base. Across the station, Dr. Ben Torres was shutting down the humanitarian aid distribution centers. For 2 years, human ships had been carrying food, medicine, and supplies to refugee camps in war-torn systems. The logistics were incredibly complex. Human economists like Ryan Walsh had created trade networks that moved resources from systems with surplus to systems in need. Ben's assistant, Maria Lopez, looked worried as she sealed the last supply container. "Doctor, what about the Tellian colonies?" "They depend on our weekly food shipments. Their crops failed again this season. The council voted," Ben said quietly. "They believe humans lack the wisdom to help with galactic affairs. We must respect their decision." Maria stared at him. "But people will starve." Ben's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "Then perhaps the wise species will find a solution." On the main deck of Harmony Base, the alien delegates were already celebrating. General Korth had opened bottles of Zephyrian battle wine. The blue liquid glowed as he poured it into crystal glasses. "Finally," he declared, raising his glass high. "Now we can pursue real diplomacy. No more human weakness holding us back." Minister Vex's crystal body flickered with satisfaction. Logical minds can now find logical solutions. The emotional contamination has been removed. Chairman Velik floated. Nearby, his energy form glowing brighter than usual. The council has matured beyond the need for primitive guidance. We shall demonstrate what true galactic leadership looks like. But even as they celebrated, problems were beginning to show. Without Amy Collins and her team of human mediators, the Zephyrian and Corvan delegates immediately fell into heated arguments. Within hours of the humans leaving, General Korth accused Minister Vex of lying about troop movements near the disputed border. "Your crystal-faced species has no honor," Korth snarled. "You speak of logic while your ships mass for." "Attack. We merely position our forces defensively," Vex replied, her body glowing with angry orange light. "Unlike your primitive species, we do not assume every movement is an act of war." The smaller species watched nervously as the two major powers squared off. Ambassador Skell of the Tellian Republic tried to speak, but both generals ignored him completely. Without human mediators to facilitate discussion, the peace talks quickly devolved into shouting matches. Meanwhile, the human evacuation continued across the galaxy. On the border world of New Geneva, Commander Nick Carter received orders to withdraw all human peacekeeping forces from the disputed territories. "Sir," his second-in-command, Lieutenant Rachel Moore, looked confused. "What about the civilian evacuation routes we've been protecting? Without our ships, the refugee convoys will be sitting ducks for raiders." Nick checked his orders again. They were clear and came directly from Admiral Stevens. All human military assets are to return to core human space. We are establishing a strict quarantine policy. No human ships are to enter disputed territories for any reason. But, sir, thousands of people depend on our protection. The galaxy has decided it can handle its own affairs, Lieutenant. We're going to let them do exactly that. Within 48 hours of the vote, every human ship, station, and outpost in non-human space had been abandoned. The withdrawal was so complete and efficient that it surprised even the human critics. There were no angry speeches, no threats of retaliation, no attempts to sabotage ongoing operations. Humans simply gathered their people and equipment and left. Admiral Kate Stevens broadcast a simple message to all human forces. Effective immediately, humanity is withdrawing from all galactic affairs. We will defend our own territory and people, but we will not interfere in the affairs of other species. The galaxy has spoken, and we have listened. The first real problems appeared within a week. The complex trade agreements that human economist Ryan Walsh had negotiated began to collapse. Ryan had spent months creating a system that balanced the needs of dozens of species, accounting for everything from seasonal variations in production to cultural preferences in trade goods. Without his oversight, ships began arriving at the wrong planets with cargo nobody wanted. On the Corvin homeworld, factories shut down when shipments of raw materials failed to arrive. The materials were sitting in warehouses on Zephyrian worlds, but nobody knew how to reroute them. The trade networks had been so seamlessly managed by humans that other species never learned how they actually worked. Dr. Sarah Johnson, the head of human xenobiology research, received desperate communications from research stations across the galaxy. For years, human scientists had been collaborating with alien researchers on projects ranging from stellar engineering to disease prevention. Now, with humans gone, half-finished research projects ground to a halt. Dr. Johnson, came a transmission from the Vortani Science Institute. Our quantum resonance experiments have destabilized. We need your team's expertise to prevent a cascade failure. Sarah looked at the message and then deleted it. Her orders were clear. No involvement in Galactic affairs. Back on Harmony Base, the peace talks had completely stalled. Without human mediators, every discussion became an argument about species superiority and ancient grievances. The Zephyrians demanded territorial concessions based on their military strength. The Corvins insisted on economic advantages due to their technological advancement. The smaller species had no voice at all. Ambassador Skell tried repeatedly to restart productive discussions, but General Korth simply told him to stay quiet while the adults talk. Minister Vex was more polite but equally dismissive, explaining that the Tellians lacked the computational capacity for complex negotiations. By the end of the second week, Chairman Velek was beginning to look worried. The ethereal leader had expected smooth progress once human interference was removed. Instead, the galactic community seemed to be falling apart faster than ever. The humans, meanwhile, had retreated to their core systems and showed no signs of looking back. Ships that tried to contact human space received polite but firm responses. Humanity respects the galaxy's decision and wishes you success in your endeavors. The galaxy was about to learn that wisdom and age were not the same thing, and that sometimes the youngest voice in the room had been the only one worth listening to. 2 weeks after the humans left Harmony Base, Administrator Zeph of the Tellian refugee camps sent his fourth emergency message to the Galactic Council. His green, plant-like fingers shook as he typed the report. Around him, the camp that housed 50,000 displaced beings was running out of food. Council Emergency Protocol 7, he transmitted. Refugee Camp Delta 9 reports critical supply shortage. Food reserves will last 3 more days. Medical supplies exhausted. Request immediate relief shipment. The response came back within hours, but it was not what Zeph expected. Contact the Zephyrian Empire or Corvin Alliance for supply coordination. The Council is focused on peace negotiations. Zeph stared at the message. For 2 years, human cargo ships had arrived like clockwork. Every week, Captain Jennifer Walsh and her fleet had managed a complex schedule that brought food, medicine, and tools to 17 different refugee camps across 4 star systems. The humans had never asked for payment or favors. They just came unloaded their supplies and left. Now the camps were on their own, and nobody seemed to know how to help them. In another part of the galaxy, the Corvin mining colony of Bright Rock was under attack. Zephyrian warships had appeared without warning, claiming the asteroid belt belonged to them by right of strength. The colony's defense coordinator, a crystal being named Tech, sent desperate messages to the Corvin High Command. We need immediate military support. Tech's transmission crackled with static as explosions echoed in the background. The Zephyrians are targeting civilian areas. They're not following any rules of war. The High Command's response was cold and logical. Military assets are being repositioned for maximum strategic advantage. Your colony is not a priority target. What the Corvins did not say was that their entire military strategy had been based on human negotiated rules of engagement. For years, human mediators like Sam Rodriguez had worked out detailed agreements about which targets were acceptable in warfare and which were off-limits. Without those agreements, both sides were falling back on their oldest, most brutal instincts. General Korth himself led the attack on Reich Rock. As his ships pounded the mining facilities, he felt satisfaction for the first time in months. This was how war should be fought, with overwhelming force and no mercy for the weak. Target the residential areas, he ordered his fleet commanders. If the Crystal Faces want to hold this territory, they should defend it properly. The attack lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 3,000 Corvin civilians were dead, and the mining colony was in ruins. But General Korth had made his point. Without human interference, the strong would take what they wanted. The Corvin response was swift and terrible. Minister Vex authorized the use of quantum disruptor weapons against Cypherian population centers. The devices had been banned under human negotiated treaties, but those treaties no longer applied. The first disruptor strike hit the Zephyrian agricultural world of Iron Valley. The weapon did not destroy buildings or kill people directly. Instead, it disrupted the molecular bonds in living tissue. 20 million Zephyrians simply dissolved into component atoms over the course of 3 days. Back on Harmony Base, Chairman Vilek watched reports of the escalating violence with growing alarm. The peace talks had completely collapsed. Without human mediators to facilitate discussion, every session ended in threats and accusations. The smaller species no longer even bothered to attend meetings. Perhaps, suggested Counselor Erix, Vilek's own daughter, we should reconsider our decision. About the humans. Valek's energy form flickered with annoyance. The humans were weak. It let emotions cloud their judgment. We are better off without their interference. But even as he spoke, Valek was reading reports that made his ancient mind race with worry. The plague that Dr. Jill Hayes and her team had been treating was spreading faster than ever. Without human medical knowledge, the disease had mutated and jumped to 3 new species. The Vortani homeworld was now under complete quarantine. Their purple-furred children were dying by the thousands, and their best doctors could not understand why. A disease seemed to attack the nervous system in ways that made no sense to conventional alien. Medicine. Dr. Hayes had been working on a breakthrough treatment when the humans withdrew. Her research notes were locked away in human databases, protected by military encryption. Even if the aliens could access them, the treatment required a specific understanding of cross-species biology that only humans seemed to possess. Captain Nick Carter sat in his command chair aboard the human patrol ship, Guardian, monitoring communications from the war zones. His ship was stationed just inside human space, at the edge of the quarantine boundary. Every day, he received dozens of emergency transmissions from alien ships requesting help, supplies, or safe passage. Captain, his communications officer, Lieutenant Tom Brooks, looked uncomfortable. We're getting a distress call from Italian transport. They're carrying medical supplies to the refugee camps, but Zephyrian raiders are attacking them. Nick looked at the display showing the battle. The Telian ship was outgunned and would be destroyed within minutes. His ship could easily drive off the raiders and save hundreds of lives. But his orders were absolute. No involvement in galactic affairs. Log the transmission and continue patrol, Nick said quietly. Not our problem anymore. Lieutenant Brooks stared at him. Sir, those people will die. The galaxy voted, Lieutenant. They decided they didn't need human help. Nick turned away from the display. We're giving them exactly what they asked for. The economic collapse was happening even faster than the military disasters. Human economist Ryan Walsh had managed trade routes between 47 different species. His system accounted for seasonal variations, cultural preferences, currency fluctuations, and political tensions. Without his oversight, the galactic economy was falling apart. Ships full of grain arrived at worlds that needed manufactured goods. Cargo vessels carrying luxury items docked at stations where people were starving. The ethereal homeworld received a shipment of ice mining equipment instead of the art supplies they had ordered for their cultural festival. Administrator Beth Williams, now head of the Human Trade Commission, received hundreds of requests for help every day. Alien governments begged her to restart the trade networks, or at least explain how they worked. Her response was always the same. Humanity respects the galaxy's decision to handle its own affairs. We are confident that species with thousands of years of experience will find appropriate solutions. The irony was not lost on anyone. The humans had been dismissed as too young and emotional to understand complex galactic problems. Now, without their primitive help, galactic civilization was collapsing in record time. On the scientific front, research projects across the galaxy ground to a halt. Dr. Sarah Johnson had been collaborating with researchers from 12 species on everything from faster-than-light communication to stellar engineering. Human scientists seemed to have a unique ability to see connections between different fields of study. The Corvan Institute of Technology had been working with humans on a project to prevent stars from going supernova. Without human insights into quantum mechanics and stellar physics, their calculations kept failing. 3 star systems were now at risk of catastrophic stellar collapse. Chairman Vilek called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Only half the delegates showed up. The rest were too busy dealing with wars, plagues, or economic collapse. We need to address the current crisis, Vilek announced to the assembled representatives. General Korth laughed bitterly. What crisis? This is what strength looks like. The weak perish and the strong survive. The strong? Ambassador Skell of the Tellian Republic stood up, his plant-like body trembling with anger. Half your empire is in revolt because you can't feed your own people without human trade networks. How dare you? Korth began. No, Skell interrupted. For once, you will listen. The humans were not weak. They were not primitive. They were the only ones holding this galaxy together, and we were too proud to see it. Minister Vex's crystal body glowed with cold light. Emotional thinking. The humans made us dependent on their systems. We are better off learning to solve our own problems. Tell that to the billion dead on your colony worlds, Skell shot back. Tell that to the children dying of plague, because human doctors aren't here to save them. The argument continued for hours, but no solutions emerged. Without human mediators to find common ground, the Council could only blame each other for a growing disasters. Meanwhile, humanity continued its quiet isolation. Ships that approached human space were turned away politely but firmly. The message was always the same. The galaxy had made its choice, and humans were respecting that decision. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson about the difference between age and wisdom and between strength and leadership. But it might already be too late to matter. 3 months after the humans withdrew from galactic affairs, the galaxy was burning. Commander Lynn Roberts stood on the bridge of the patrol ship, Endeavour, watching her sensors track the massive fleet battle happening just outside human space. 50 Zephyrian warships were fighting 30 Corvan vessels, and the energy signatures suggested both sides were using their most destructive weapons. Commander, her tactical officer, Lieutenant Paul Chun, looked worried. The battle is moving toward the Nexus system. There are 3 billion civilians there. Lin watched the tactical display with calm eyes. 6 months ago, human peacekeepers would have moved to protect those civilians. They would have positioned themselves between the warring fleets and forced negotiations. But those days were over. Not our concern, Lieutenant. Continue patrol. The war between the Zephyrians and Corvins had started small, but now it had pulled in 8 other species. The Andromedans had sided with the Zephyrians because they feared Corvin technology. The Helix Confederation joined the Corvins because they hated Zephyrian expansion. Each week, more species chose sides or found themselves conquered by one faction or the other. What made it worse was that neither side was fighting like they used to. Without human negotiated rules of engagement, both empires had returned to the brutal warfare of their ancestors. Civilian targets were fair game. Surrender was rarely accepted. Entire planets were being sterilized from orbit. On the ethereal homeworld, Chairman Valek faced the most serious challenge to his authority in 3,000 years. His own daughter, Counselor Arix, had called for a vote of no confidence. Half the ethereal council supported her. "Father," Arix said, her energy, form flickering with frustration, "we must face reality. The humans were not holding us back. They were holding us together." Valak's ancient mind struggled with the concept. For millennia, the ethereals had been the wise leaders of galactic civilization. They had seen young species rise and fall, always, maintaining their position as the voice of reason and experience. The humans were children, Valak insisted, emotional and impulsive. "Without them, we can think clearly? Think clearly?" Arix gestured toward the reports, covering Valak's desk. "The Vortani plague has now killed 40 billion beings across 12 worlds. The economic collapse has left entire star systems without basic supplies. Wars are raging in 18 sectors. Is this clear thinking?" Before Valak could respond, an aide rushed into the chamber. "Chairman, urgent message from the Tellian Republic." The hologram showed Ambassador Skell, but he looked nothing like the confident diplomat who had attended the peace talks. His green, plant-like skin was withered, and his movements were slow and painful. "Chairman Valak," Skell's voice was weak, "I speak for the coalition of smaller species. 17 worlds have now joined our alliance. We formally request that the Galactic Council invite humanity back to the negotiating table." Valak's energy form dimmed. The council voted. The decision was made through proper democratic process. "The decision was wrong," Skell said bluntly. "We have counted the cost of human absence. In 3 months, more beings have died than in the previous 5 years of border conflicts. Our civilization is collapsing." The transmission ended, leaving Valak alone with his daughter. Around them, the crystal spires of the ethereal capital caught the light of their dying sun. Even their homeworld was having problems. Without human engineers to maintain the stellar stabilizers, their star was becoming unstable. "Perhaps, Arix said quietly, wisdom is knowing when you have made a mistake." Meanwhile, the crisis was spreading beyond military conflicts. The plague that had started in Vortani space was now affecting species that had never been in contact with each other. Dr. Amanda Foster, monitoring the situation from her research station in human space, recognized the pattern immediately. "It's not one disease," she told her team. "It's 3 different pathogens that have learned to work together. The Vortani plague, the Corvin nerve virus, and something new from the war zones." Her assistant, Dr. Mike Thompson, looked at the data with growing horror. "The mortality rate is approaching 90% in some populations. If this spreads to human space, ... It won't," Amanda said firmly. "Our quarantine protocols are absolute. No ships in or out." "But Amanda, billions of people are dying. We could help them." Amanda was quiet for a long moment. She had worked with alien researchers for years before the withdrawal. Some of them had been friends. Now she watched them die while she had the knowledge that might save them. The galaxy made its choice, Mike. They decided we were too primitive to help with their problems. Who are we to argue with such wisdom? The desperate situation finally pushed the remaining council members to take action. They secretly sent envoys to the human border, hoping to negotiate humanity's return. The delegation included representatives from 6 species, led by the Andromedan diplomat Kess. Their ship, flying under a flag of truce, approached the human patrol vessel Endeavor. Commander Lynn Roberts received their request for a meeting with professional courtesy. "This is Commander Roberts of the United Earth Navy. State your business." The Andromedan envoy appeared on the screen. His blue skin was pale with stress, and his usually perfect diplomatic robes were wrinkled. "Commander, I request permission to speak with human leadership about the current galactic crisis." Lynn studied the alien diplomat for a moment. The Galactic Council voted to restrict human participation in galactic affairs. "We respect that decision. There is nothing to discuss." "Commander, please. The situation has changed. We need human help." The Council deemed human wisdom insufficient for galactic governance. Surely species with thousands of years of experience can handle their own problems. Kess leaned forward desperately. "Millions are dying every day. The economy has collapsed. Wars are spreading across the galaxy. We were wrong about humanity." Lynn's expression remained neutral. "I will relay your message to my superiors. Good luck with your endeavors." The connection ended, leaving the alien envoys staring at a blank screen. They had expected anger, demands for apologies, or at least some negotiation. Instead, they found something much worse: complete indifference. The envoys waited at the border for 3 days. Finally, a message came from Admiral Kate Stevens herself. "The United Earth government appreciates the Galactic Council's recognition of their error. However, humanity has moved on to other priorities. We wish the galaxy success in resolving its current difficulties." When the envoys reported back to the Council, the reaction was shock and disbelief. General Korth, his empire now fractured by civil wars, could not understand it. "They must be planning something," he insisted. "No species gives up power so easily." But the reports from human space told a different story. Humanity was not building up military forces or preparing for conquest. Instead, they were thriving in isolation. Human colonies were expanding into previously unexplored regions. Trade with newly discovered species in distant galaxies was making humanity richer than ever. The final blow came when Ambassador Jake Morrison reached through secret diplomatic channels, sent his last message to the Galactic Council. "To the esteemed members of the Galactic Council, humanity offered our friendship, our knowledge, and our lives in service of galactic peace. When that offering was judged insufficient by your collective wisdom, we accepted your decision with grace. We harbor no anger toward any species and wish you well in your future endeavors. However, we have concluded that galactic civilization may not be ready for the type of cooperation we had envisioned. We encourage you to seek solutions that align with your superior wisdom and experience. With respect, Ambassador Jake Morrison, speaking for humanity." The message was polite, formal, and absolutely final. Humanity was not angry. They were not playing diplomatic games. They had simply moved on, leaving the galaxy to face the consequences of its own choices. As Chairman Vilek read the message for the 10th time, he finally understood what his daughter had been trying to tell him. Wisdom was not about age or experience. It was about knowing how to build something better than what came before, and in their pride, they had thrown away the one species that might have helped them do exactly that. 6 months after humanity withdrew from galactic affairs, the Galactic Council held its final emergency session. Only 12 delegates remained from the original 47 species. The rest were either dead, conquered, or too busy fighting for survival to attend meetings. Chairman Velek floated at the head of an almost empty chamber. His energy form was dimmer than it had been in centuries. Around him, the few remaining delegates looked like survivors of a disaster rather than leaders of a galactic civilization. "We must face the truth," Velek announced to the sparse gathering. "Our civilization is ending." The numbers were devastating. The war between the Zephyrians and Corvins had consumed both empires. General Korth was dead, killed in a rebellion on his own homeworld. Minister Vex had fled to a remote colony when her crystal cities were overrun by plague victims. 18 species had gone extinct in the past month alone. The Vortani plague had mutated again, now affecting 15 different species. Without human medical expertise, the death toll had reached 200 billion and was climbing every day. Entire star systems had gone dark as their populations died off. The economic collapse was complete. Without human-managed trade networks, most worlds could not get basic supplies. The ethereal homeworld was running out of food. The Andromedan colonies had no power because they could not import fuel. The great cities that had stood for thousands of years were becoming ghost towns. Ambassador Skell of the Tellian Republic struggled to stand. His plant-like body was withering from malnutrition. Most of his people were dead, victims of starvation when the refugee camps ran out of supplies. "I move to formally apologize to humanity and request their immediate return," Skell said weakly. Vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, every remaining delegate agreed on something. Velek composed the message himself. It was a formal apology that acknowledged the Council's mistake and begged humanity to return. The message was transmitted to every human colony, repeated on all frequencies, and accompanied by offers of tribute, territory, and anything else humanity might want. The response came from Director Matt Thompson of the newly established Human Diplomatic Corps. His message was polite, professional, and devastating. The United Earth Government acknowledges receipt of the Galactic Council's apology. We appreciate the gesture and harbor no ill will toward any species. However, after careful consideration, we have concluded that galactic civilization may not be ready for the level of cooperation we had envisioned. We wish the remaining council members success in their future endeavors. The message was like a death sentence. Humanity was not angry. They were not demanding revenge or tribute. They had simply moved on and found better opportunities elsewhere. Truth was that humanity was thriving without the galaxy. Human exploration fleets had made contact with 3 advanced civilizations in distant star clusters. These new allies respected human wisdom and treated them as equals rather than young upstarts. Human colonies were expanding rapidly into uninhabited systems, building new worlds without the constant threat of galactic wars. Human scientists were making breakthrough discoveries in cooperation with their new alien partners. Human traders were getting rich in markets that valued their skills rather than dismissing them. Admiral Kate Stevens, now head of the Human Space Command, reviewed reports from across human space. Colony populations were booming. Scientific research was advancing faster than ever. The economy was stronger than it had been in decades. Admiral, her aide, Captain David Kim, brought her the latest intelligence reports. Long-range sensors show that 70% of the old galactic territory is now uninhabited. The plague is still spreading, and the wars continue. Kate looked at the data with no emotion. Any threats to human space? None, Admiral. The remaining alien governments are too weak to threaten anyone. Most are just trying to keep their own people alive. Kate nodded and filed the report. It was not her problem anymore, but humanity's isolation was not absolute. A small group of species had learned different lessons from the collapse. The Tellian Republic, what remained of it, approached. Humanity not as supplicants, but as potential partners. They were joined by the Vortani survivors, a reformed faction of Corvan rebels, and several smaller species that had always supported human mediation. This delegation was led by Commander Zera of the Vortani survivors and Dr. Kelm of the Reformed. Corvans, unlike the previous envoys, they did not come begging for help. Instead, they came with a proposal for genuine partnership. They met with Administrator Beth Williams, Jake Morrison's successor, at a neutral station on the edge of human space. Beth had been chosen specifically because she represented a new generation of human diplomats who had never experienced the old galactic system. "We are not here to ask for charity," Commander Zara said. Her purple fur was scarred from the plague, but her eyes were clear and determined. "We come to offer partnership between equals." Dr. Kelm, his crystal body flickering with honest light, added, "We have learned from our mistakes. We understand now that cooperation requires mutual respect, not hierarchies based on age or power." Beth listened to their proposal carefully. These species wanted to build something new, a smaller alliance based on genuine cooperation rather than dominance. They offered to share knowledge freely, to contribute equally to common projects, and to treat all members as partners regardless of how long they had been in space. "What you're describing," Beth said slowly, "is exactly what humanity originally hoped to build with the old galactic community." "Yes," Zara replied, "but we were too proud to see it then. Some of us are wiser now." The negotiations took weeks, but they were different from anything in galactic history. Instead of arguing about who deserved what, the species worked together to design systems that would benefit everyone. Human mediators like Dr. Rachel Lewis worked alongside alien experts to create new trade agreements, research partnerships, and mutual defense pacts. The result was the Cooperative Alliance, a small but growing confederation based on the principles humanity had always advocated. Members contributed according to their abilities and received according to their needs. Decisions were made by consensus, with every species having an equal voice. Within a year, the Cooperative Alliance was thriving. Human medical teams worked with Vortani researchers to finally cure the plague. Tellian agricultural experts helped human colonies develop new crops. Reformed Corvan engineers shared their technology freely, while humans provided the wisdom to use it responsibly. Meanwhile, the old galactic powers continued to crumble. The Zephyrian Empire had split into dozens of warring factions. A Corvan alliance controlled less than 10% of its former territory. The ethereal homeworld had been abandoned when their star went supernova, an event that human engineers could have prevented if they had been allowed to help. Chairman Veluk, one of the few survivors of his species, sent a final message to the Cooperative Alliance. It was a simple acknowledgement that he had been wrong and that humanity had been right all along. He died 3 days later, the last of a species that had considered itself the wisest in the galaxy. The galaxy was a very different place now. Where once there had been a vast civilization of dozens of species, now there were two main groups, the thriving Cooperative Alliance and the dying remnants of the old galactic powers. But in the end, that was exactly what humanity had always sighed would happen. True civilization was not built on dominance or ancient privilege. It was built on cooperation, respect, and the wisdom to know that the newest voice in the room might be the one everyone should listen to. The galaxy had learned that lesson, but it had taken the collapse of everything they thought they knew to understand it. Some species learned in time to save themselves. Others did not. Humanity, for their part, was content with their smaller but wiser alliance. They had learned something too, that sometimes walking away was the strongest thing you could do, and that real friends would find you when they were ready to meet you as equals.